in Utah, when I was a boy, everybody knew what a downwinder was. We were the anti-nuclear capital of the world. I was an autistic kid. My father was a drafted United States Marine, an incredible man. I come from an incredible family. My uncle stood on Omaha Beach on D-Day. I grew up on a huge ranch out by the lake. He was a beautiful, incredible person. He was at Pendleton, combat ready, and they were human guinea pig. They were marched into the trenches in Nevada. They're called atomic veterans. He nearly died at the blast. Between 1951 and 1968, we had 300 open-air tests. Well, as different scientists started to write about this, Wallace Stegner was at the University of Utah at the time. I got to know him. Edward Abbey was hanging around there. I got to know him. I got to know all these environmentalists, and I was an environmentalist. And it was a passionate, intense subject matter there.
All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. They'll be calling you a radical. Twingate, 311, whatever you want to call it. I call it Pacific genocide, whatever. It's fucking giant conspiratorial across all demographics. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. They'll be calling you a radical. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. Twingate, 311, whatever you want to call it. I call it Pacific genocide, whatever. It's fucking giant conspiratorial across all demographics. They'll be calling you a radical. May God have mercy on all of your souls.
Nuclear power was evolving. We were promised, oh, this can't happen.
Hey there, this is Lonnie Clark from the Post-Ignorance Project. I'm filling in for Kevin Blanch this week. He's on his way to California. And I'd like to say hi to all the UCY-TV people who are listening to us. And thank you so much for your support. As we all know, tomorrow is the unbelievable 4th anniversary of Fukushima having been summarily ignored. The world has seen the worst catastrophic event ever in the history of our known history. And again, it still goes on, and the news is not paying attention to it. The government is not paying attention to it. Most people know nothing about it. So it's up to us to tell people the great danger that our planet is in and to share the information with them. I thought what I'd do is talk to you about tomorrow's events. There's going to be worldwide events all around our country and around the world. And hopefully anyone listening to this radio program will make an effort to get out. Kevin is going to be in Diablo Canyon. He'll be out at Avila Beach. I guess they call it Avila Beach. Avila Beach in California. It's right around the corner from Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant. And he'll be out there at 10 o'clock and doing his own little protest. And I think what he's going to do is when he flies in today, he's going out to meet the Mothers from March. He arrives in California sometime this morning. And he is going to, the Mothers for Peace have a march going on that started on the 4th of March, and they have been walking to the gates of Diablo Canyon, and they plan on being there today, March 10th. Kevin's getting off the airplane and going to go find them and continue their walk, and he will be there with them. And at the end of this walk, they will have some ceremony and talk. With the Mothers for Peace, there is going to be Reverend Salada, a Buddhist monk, and Jimmy Joe of Chumash, the Chumash Indian, who will be there talking about basically the desecration of our Mother Earth and of our planet by the nuclear cartel. And I will be out tomorrow at the Salem, Oregon Capitol State Building. There's a few things going on in Oregon. Let me skip back to finish what's going on in Diablo Canyon first, because the Post-Ignorance Project is going to be there. I believe in force. We have many of our supporters that are going to show up and be vocal and continue to contact their elected officials and continue to talk to people that we know to let them know the grave danger that's summarily being ignored. So Kevin's meeting with the Mothers for March people today. He'll be out there until the evening. He will be at the Avila Beach Pier tomorrow at 10 a.m. And then I believe he's going to walk over to Diablo Canyon and then back over to the courthouse to meet up again with the Mothers for March. So there's going to be quite a few organizations out in Diablo Canyon. It is kind of a cornerstone right now. There's major efforts to get Diablo Canyon closed down before it closes us down as human species. So hopefully everybody will join Kevin there tomorrow. He is going to be starting his consciousness walk. And I don't know, I'm sure he's been talking to you, and you guys are making efforts to meet him along the route if you're in California. He'll be walking from Diablo Canyon basically to San Francisco. We think it will take about a month and a half of walking every single day. We definitely need your support. There are many areas in that walk that are pretty isolated, so as much support as we can get, that would be awesome. And this is really just to bring the awareness. It's called the consciousness walk, to make people conscious of what's really, really going on. Because most people think that Fukushima is completely finished or it's got residual problems, when in fact it's not residual problems. The fact that they've ignored it has compounded the problems. It's not getting better. It's not easing down. It's getting exponentially worse. And the nuclear cartel is just ignoring it and pretending as if business as usual. We now have in Japan a situation where people are being encouraged to go take tour trips to Fukushima, Japan right now. They're pushing tourist trips. A major Japanese airline has agreed to serve Fukushima food in support of Fukushima. Frankly, that's the worst thing that they could do. I mean, if they really wanted to support Fukushima, they could demand worldwide attention to a big gaping hole that's being drilled in our planet from Fukushima. So we have a lot on our plate, folks, to get serious about. There are going to be Fukushima awareness events really seriously worldwide, and there is a website that you could go to that will tell you where they're at, because they're all over the place. And let me get to it. It's called Fukushima 4th Anniversary Events.blogspot.com. And there's a list of events that will tell you from Kansas City to California, from New York all the way over to Washington. There's things going on all over our country, and we need to be out in force. Anybody who hears this needs to not stay at home at all tomorrow. It's your duty and your obligation to hit the streets wherever you're at and raise our voices, because tomorrow's the 4th anniversary. 4 years, unmitigated nuclear pollution being dumped into our Pacific Ocean and into the air. And it is affecting us. Fukushima is definitely here, and it's here to stay. We're in the decision stew, folks. And it's up to us to learn how to help humans live with it instead of staying in fear. People don't want to talk about it because they're scared to death. They don't, it is a very frightening thing. And that's the really despicable part about it, is it is a really scary thing. And it does, the youth think that there's absolutely no future. They're too afraid to even face this. And I say that as Americans and as human beings, we have a duty and obligation as adults to face this monster, to face what it is that we're looking at. That's in fact my call. I think that we actually need to demand science instead of spending all these billions of dollars trying to tell us that it's not harming us. Spend billions of dollars telling us how to mitigate it and how to stop it. Because as long as they continue to ignore it, we're not going to be getting it done. And, Americans can continue to act like battered wives, but that's not going to help us. And in fact, the battered wife analogy is probably perfect. As long as we continue to ignore it and protect our defenders, which Being silent and complicit, that's protecting the abusers. I mean, it's as bad as a woman who knows her children are getting molested and does nothing to leave her spouse or to call the cops or do anything. It's complicity. And that's what people on this planet are doing right now. I think that people are just so overwhelmed. The economy's bad. The warmongers are out in full force. People are freaked out about that. I think, frankly, the biggest war we have going on is in Fukushima. 4 nuclear power plants that they cannot control. Guess what? The nuclear monster is winning. Godzilla is winning this war. And he is seriously out to kill all of us. And we need to learn how to stand up and fight up against him. So I hope that many of you will show up, as many of you can, will show up tomorrow in Avila Beach. Support Kevin. It would be really awesome if we could walk with a group of like 50 people from the post-ignorance group to meet up with for the Mothers for Peace group. And we could be a strong force. It would really send a strong message to the people who are watching this movement. And believe you me, there are people watching this movement. We know they are. You know who it is? It's the warmongers, the people who are profiting from it. I mean, I don't know if any of you look at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, but it looks like they're just moving cranes around, spinning their wheels so they can just charge the Japanese government and the worldwide government money. It is really a crime against humanity what's going on. And so it's up to us. It is really, really up to us to get out there and get focused and I personally would love to see not a fourth commemoration of the Fukushima power plant being ignored. Let's make the year 4. Let's make this next year the 5th year that we're going to have to be doing it, passing the 4th anniversary. Let's make this next year the one where our governments actually pay attention to Fukushima and put worldwide attention on it and decide to put all the best minds together and where they actually find some truth and they actually begin to stop the monster, because at this point it's been unmitigated. They have done absolutely nothing to stop Fukushima. And when they say, well, there's nothing we can do, that's not true. There's things we can do. They're just not doing it because they get to make a lot more money. I mean, imagine what this is doing to the industrial medical complex. How many more patients they get to have. They get to squeeze every little last dime out of us. And I personally think that we need to stop. It needs to stop. For our children's sake, for our future's sake. I had somebody say to me, well, gee whiz, for all the harm that radiation causes, a lot more people have been killed by cars. We should make cars illegal. I'm like, look, that is such a false equivalency. That's not even an argument. I've never seen a car cause genetic mutations. I've never seen a car cause polydactyl children. I mean, if you get killed in a car wreck, you're killed. If you get maimed for the rest of your life, it's one life that's affected, or maybe however many people were involved in the car crash. But when we're talking nuclear contamination, we're talking about generations to come and unmitigated danger. Danger that we don't even know what it's going to do to us. This is the insane part. They have grossly neglected their responsibility to figure out what nuclear really does and the true harm it causes. I'm reading this book on my YouTube channel called Population Control for Nuclear Pollution. And it was written by Arthur Tamplin and John Goffman, 2 of the most respected scientists of their time in 1970. The results of their studies in the 60s got them drummed out of the nuclear industry because they did not want to lie, and the nuclear industry didn't want to hear what they had to say, which is basically, we shouldn't be using nuclear power until we understand it. They didn't say they hated nuclear power. They said, we shouldn't actually be using it because we don't understand it. We know for a fact that every 2 rads of radiation in the air causes 32,000 extra cancers. Check that out. 2 rads of radiation causes 32,000 extra cancers. That is a statistic that ought to knock everybody's socks off. This is why we have an epidemic of cancer on the world right now. It's because of the nuclear cartel. They also did a study in the late 60s that showed for every cancer it cost the government $250,000. So they did basically a mathematical, our government, the Atomic Energy Commission, which has such a bad reputation, it had to change its name to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Our government actually quantified in dollars how much it was going to cost the government on the cost of the medicalizer, their cancer victims, and whether it was worth it. And that's what they call a calculated risk. And as John Goffman pointed out in his book, they didn't actually do any studies on the calculated risk. They just talked about it. They just took some of his studies, extrapolated on it, but they didn't do any calculated risk studies. None. Zero. When they went before the Senate hearings in the late 70s, in the early 70s, when they were trying to, stop nuclear altogether, the AEC gave the government absolutely no proof to refute John Goffman's information, Arthur Templin's information. But you know what was in the balance? A $25 billion deal. In those days, $25 billion, that's a lot of money. And so we already know what happened. We already know what happened. We had 4 years of Fukushima going on, and Abe telling us that the world's great. Come to Japan. Come be a tourist in Fukushima. I mean, this is like Looneyville. It's a seriously, absolutely insane thing. And so it is really, really up to us in the anti-nuke movement to get out in the streets. I mean, how many people that are listening to this radio show have a family member who has had cancer? Or know somebody who was in their mid-20s who died of a heart attack? Or how many people do you know that have diabetes without even understanding why? They don't eat wrong. They just have diabetes. All of these things, all these low-level things, diabetes, the flu, getting rashes on your body, your ears bleeding, those are all low-level radiation symptoms. And the ironic part is there is no low level of radiation that is sick. None. And that's also what John Goffman and Arthur Tamplin proved. There is no safe level of radiation, period. There is no safe level. Now, the government says it's acceptable. Why do they say it's acceptable? Because they calculated the financial risk. They calculated 2 rads times 32,000 times how many rads we have times $250,000, and they said, okay, we can handle that financial risk. We're not talking about financial risk. We're talking about human lives and the life of our planet. 15,000 seals have washed up, and people are saying, gee, it's a mystery. We have no idea. Unless the word for radiation is now going to be renamed mystery, we know exactly what caused their death. I heard a scientist from, ironically, where all the nuclear lies come from, the University of Oregon, talk about why we're having these massive deaths, and he says that the warming waters have kept the old water from resurfacing, and there is layers of water that takes 20 to 30 years to come to the top. And so that old water usually comes up as the water cycles in. This is what he explained. And he says, well, because the oceans are warm, it's keeping the old water down. That's why the baby seals can't get their food, because the new water's not coming up with all the nutrients they need. Without a single word talking about how Fukushima is affecting the bottom of the ocean. And so it's a circular argument. We're not even getting halfway scientific information coming out of the nuclear industry. In fact, we're not getting scientific information coming out of the biomedical industry at all, because they're jumping up and down, twisting like a frickin' pretzel, trying to not say that radiation is causing the world catastrophic harm. And it's not just from Fukushima, it's from Hanford, it's from WIPP, it's from Sellafield, it's from Chernobyl, which is still a bleeding eyesore. Chernobyl is not over, folks. I mean, just those, 4 events on top of the little minor events that we're not even being told about. And God forbid that we don't know anything about what's going on in the Ukraine and their 15 nuclear power plants. or the stuff that China's doing. I mean, what is it going to take for people to stand up and say, no, we're not going to let you destroy our planet? That's exactly what they're doing. They're literally pouring shit on our ankles, and we're just deciding to walk through the shit instead of saying stop. We're just letting them keep dumping it on us and maybe holding the babies above our heads so babies don't drown, they drown last. Is that what we're going to do? Just let the babies drown last while all the adults are dead? It's a complete insane world. And you know what? I'm for taking it back. Which is why I supported Kevin Blanch in the very first place. Because he's the first person that I heard when I was looking on the radio and trying to find out about Fukushima. Very late in the game, actually, May of 2012, when I realized it wasn't over. I thought it was over for a year and a half. I actually really thought that the government had handled it, that, like Obama said, no problem. There's no unsafe level of radiation. You don't have to worry about it. And then I had a nightmare. And then I started doing some research, and then I went, holy shit, it's not over. In fact, not only is it not over, it's worse 4 years later than it was a long time ago. I mean, 4 years of the poor Japanese people being oppressed and victimized and used like lab rats. And see what Kevin might about the Helen Caldicott Symposium, but you know what my takeaway was that? The biggest thing I got out of that, there was a speaker there, and forgive me for not knowing his name, but they were talking about the nuclear industry is the biggest racist industry that there is. They do all their lab ratting, most of the lab ratting, although they use the American soldiers as their best lab rats because then they can tell them what to do. But all of their lab ratting is on people of color. Think about it. The Marshallese, the Native Americans, the Japanese people, they have no regard for human life, much less life of people who are not white males. And it is just an outrage. I don't know what you guys are going to do tomorrow. I'm getting up and I'm going to the Capitol. I'm going to be handing out flyers to anybody who walks into the Capitol building with information on the front, phone numbers to contact to get involved with on the back. Because it is time for every single adult to stand up and save our future. This is not optional, you guys. We have got to save our future. We're not talking about, I don't want to get cancer, me personally. It's not us we're talking about. We're talking about our future generation of human life on this planet. And in fact, all life on the planet. We haven't had a baby orca born in 3 years. We had one female baby orca born, and we're yet to see whether she comes back or can survive another year in the what I call the plutonium Pacific. So it really is up to us to stand up, to get out, and poke them in the eye, not physically, but poke them in the eye, make them uncomfortable. Tell them the uncomfortable facts, the so-called inconvenient truth. It's not just inconvenient. It's catastrophic truth. This is a catastrophic event that every government on our planet is ignoring. And why are they ignoring it? That's the question. Why are they ignoring it? Because they are being told by the nuclear cartel, don't worry, we're handling it the best we can. There's really not much we can do about it. We're doing the best we can. They pay attention to that lady with the little high collar, what's her name out there in Fukushima? I don't know, Jones or something. The evil woman. I mean, seriously, she fancies herself a human being. I mean, they believe that it's being handled. It's not being handled. Take a look at the Fukushima Daiichi video feed from TEPCO, and you can see it's not being handled. You can actually see flames now coming from the right side of the screen. Something's going on over there, and guess what? We're on a need-to-know basis, and we don't need to know. Well, actually, President Obama passed a law that said we don't need to know. He changed the limitations rates from the government warning us when 1 in 10,000 person got cancer to now they're going to tell us when 1 in 26 gets cancer. So by the time 1 in 26 gets cancer, folks, the rest of the planet's going to be pretty toast. So I don't know who they think is going to live. I mean, when you consider that there's 87 people that have more wealth on this planet than all the rest of us, so what does that mean? 3 of those people are going to get cancer, and then they'll tell us. 3 or 4 of them are going to get cancer. They're going to tell us, oh, by the way, folks, we've got some serious radiation problems coming from the nuclear cartel, the biggest criminals on the history of the planet. I mean, it is a serious outrage and total disregard for human life, which is why we're going to be out there in force tomorrow. Kevin Blanch is going to be at Avila Pier tomorrow at 10 a.m. on March 11th. Today you can look for him out near Diablo Canyon, at the gates of Diablo Canyon. He's meeting up for the Mothers for Peace movement. They've been walking there, and he'll be out there. His flight arrives, I think his flight arrives like around noon or 11 o'clock, and he is going to take a cab. I don't know if he's been able to hook up with any activists out there to pick him up from the airport, but he's going to go find the people that are walking from Santa Barbara up to the gates of Diablo Canyon, and he's going to be in communion with the Mothers for Peace today. And then tomorrow he'll be out at the Avila Beach Pier at 10 a.m., and, he'll be talking about the information that he's going to share. He'll be meeting up, I'm sure, with other activist groups. I know he's talked to the Mothers for Peace. They're going to be doing some movements in union. And it's important for us to bring ourselves together, I know that Kevin went to the Helen Caldecott Symposium. Him and Ackerman were a little disappointed that they didn't allow Kevin to speak, but that was a very rigid, those types of scientific forums have a very rigid format. They cannot deviate from it, or I guess they could if they were radicals, but guess what? Those scientists that were up there are not radicals. They're going to stick to the scientific format of the forum, and they really would not bend. And they were kind of angry and insulted that it was even asked. And so people's feelings got bruised all the way around. But I think it's really important to remember that those are the people that we need to wake up, not just the average public Joe. We need to wake people. I mean, Helen Caldecott is actually going to be in Santa Barbara tomorrow. I saw this on that website. It's called Fukushima 4th Anniversary Events.blogspot.com. And I saw that Helen Caldecott is going to be at an event up in Santa Barbara, and I have to say it kind of cracked me up because Kevin's always talking about how Helen Caldecott only does things for money. Well, we disagree on that quite a bit. I mean, I'm a big supporter of Helen Caldecott. I think he doesn't understand her because she's a very strict, scientifically thinking person. And I think all those people are just so afraid to start speaking out against the nuclear industry because they know once they do, if they deviate from the format that they've created, they will be ridiculed within their own scientific community, and they're not. It will really actually destroy their credibility. So a lot of those people really don't want to do that. But she is going to be speaking Preserving the Future, 14th Annual with Frank Kelly Lecture at Humanity's Future of Nuclear Age Peace Foundation will hold its 14th Annual Frank K. Kelly Lecture on Humanity's Future with Helen Caldecott, speaking on preserving the future. $50 to get in. So, let's see, when did that happen? So I don't know if she's going to be out there, but it's on here, and I don't know where it will be. It says, visit here for more information, Obrero Theater in Santa Barbara, California. So there's actually going to be a lot of actions. There's going to be in Los Angeles. There is going to be Love to Nippon 2015 14th Annual 311 Memorial Event, reflecting on Japan's worst earthquake and tsunami and lessons learned. You know, it's this type of thing, lessons learned, really pisses me off personally. We haven't learned a fucking lesson. They haven't learned one lesson. They're still licensing the nuclear power plants. What did the NRC do in the United States? They allowed the nuclear plants to just store their radioactive waste right on site. They have not learned one lesson. It's not about learning lessons, folks. And I think this is the stuff that gets Kevin really worked up. These people are out there saying that they're activists, and they're just regurgitating the same old bullshit from the nuclear cartel. We have got to think outside the box, folks. We have got to stop being polite. We've got to stop acting like things matter. The only thing that matters is stopping the nuclear cartel, because they're going to kill all life on our planet. Period. Hands down. That's their mission. They don't care. They are attempting to, cull the crowd. They're doing the culling of human beings, I guess. And, I personally think that's a crime against humanity. I mean, how many of you out there have family members who've had cancer, who have died of cancer, or children who have had cancer? Children don't just get cancer. Let's be clear about that. Children don't just get cancer. You might be genetically predisposed to getting cancer because your father or your mother was exposed to nuclear. That's how you get cancer. It's a complete outrage. The language that people have just absorbed and regurgitated is really despicable. As human beings, we really need to watch our language and watch our tongues and watch our words. And I'm not talking about not cussing and not, going off on people. I'm talking about not regurgitating the same old bullshit that's been shoved down our throats since anyone listening to this can remember. They've been after this since the mid-40s. And ever since they discovered the nuclear thing, it's been a big secret, and they chose from the very beginning to lie about it. That's the bottom line. They chose to lie about it. And at a government level, including the Japanese government, from what I understand, it is considered publicly rude in Japan to discuss radiation or discuss the things that happened to the people after World War II. People just don't talk about it. And you know what the nuclear cartel is counting on? It's counting on people's stability. It's counting on people's basic need to just, if we want peace more than we want war, so we're willing to just shut our traps and take whatever they dish out because we want peace so badly. Well, you know what? By running away from these kinds of things, we're not going to get peace. We're only going to get more war. The only time you can stand up, the only time you stop a bully is by standing up to them, and that's the reality. And these people are horrible, horrible bullies. And they're warmongers, and they don't care about human life. And they don't care about life on our planet. They don't care about themselves. They're mentally ill. That's really the issue. They are mentally ill. I don't know how many of you have talked to nuclear scientists, but honestly, their brains just click off when you start talking to them. They're like, well, that's not true. They rely on information that's, as John Goffman said in his book, he outlined in his book exactly how the safe, the quote, safe, unsafe radiation, when it's got tested. And you know how they did it? He tested for 10,000 people. They didn't want him to test for 10,000. So what the nuclear industry did was they tested 10 people and said, wow, there's no cancers here for 10 people. So basically what they did was they took 1,000 and then they extrapolated it and they said, well, 1 in 10 might get cancer, so that means 1 in 1,000 might get cancer, so maybe it's 1 in 10,000 might get cancer. There was no scientific study on the safe level of radiation because there is no safe level of radiation. But what they fundamentally did was they created the basis. They created a starting point for all future scientists to base their scientific studies on. They created a false foundation so that when you talk to a nuclear scientist or somebody involved in the industry, they will swear to you that you don't know what you're talking about, that this is standard radiation limits. Yeah, it might be standard radiation limits for the last 50 or 60 years, but it's all been based on the premise of a lie and misinformation. And so we have a whole class of scientists who have been grossly miseducated, undereducated, and miseducated. And in fact, that's what America suffers from. We have probably the largest sector of medically undereducated physicians on the entire planet. Our physicians know very little about how to help a human life thrive. They're good, slice and dice doctors. They can stitch up a wound. But seriously, understanding the causes of disease and illness and how to really help, it's actually illegal. It's illegal for an American medical doctor to give you any information on what they call alternative, which has been throughout history standard medical practice. So it's illegal. And so now we have a whole list, a whole industry of physicians who have been minimally medically healed, trained. They don't know how to heal. I mean, it's beyond comprehension. It is beyond comprehension. We're eating our own arms off, and people are just willing to wade in the shit, man. I just don't get it. It's like I told my kids, I wish I could wake up every day and just ignore this. But, I'd love to go back to my life pre-May 5th, 2012, where I just was like believing that the government took care of all this nuclear stuff. I've been living in Oregon for about 10 years. When I first moved here, I heard about Hanford, but I was honestly very resistant. I didn't go up to see Helen Caldecott when she came up to Hanford about 5 years ago because I thought, these people are radicals. It can't be that bad. The government wouldn't let it be that bad. I said that to the lady who was organizing it. It can't be that bad. It just can't be that bad. And guess what? It's beyond that I could even think about bad. That's the reality. 40 miles of unlined trenches. Bechtel, who is completely, legally and technically not responsible, that's what they're going to say, because they hired a subcontractor to do the work, dug 40 miles of trenches up in Hanford and was supposed to triple line the trenches and dump the radioactive waste in there to allow it to cool down. And they just dug the 40 miles of trenches and thought they'd save money and just dumped the nuclear radioactive waste into the trenches. And now it's leaching into the groundwater that's feeding into the drinking water of Seattle and Portland. And it's a big, urgent issue. They have all these, like, if you go to the website at Hanford, they have all these beautiful little slideshows. Don't you love the way the nuclear industry does that? They give you all their little computer, beautiful, quarters sectioned up, perfectly diced up little sections and tells us all exactly what they're doing. When in fact, they have a complete disregard for life on our planet and the human beings working in their plant. And the only way that they can thrive is by paying people so much money that they threaten them with being fired and terminated and tell them they'll never get a job again anywhere else if they happen to speak out. It's complete coercion. I mean, it's run like the mafia. I mean, the nuclear cartel is kind of like a pimp. That's exactly what they're doing. They're pimping out all the people that work for them. And it's how long are we going to take this, folks? How long are we just going to sit? I mean, I think it's awesome that people are tuning into this radio show this morning. I mean, I'm really honored that I get to participate in it today and that I can cover for Kevin on his weekly radio show when he leaves out of town. But, for all of you that are listening, get out in the streets. Find a way. Find a way to get out. Take time out of your day. We need to shut the entire, if we could get if people would just not go to work tomorrow, if enough people took the streets tomorrow and decided that they were going to stand on the steps of their Capitol building or go to a nuclear power plant near them or do something and publicly show their support for stopping the nuclear industry tomorrow, we could make a gigantic economic impact. And I guarantee you that they would be doing something about it. Sorry about that. My phone's going to ring 3 times. Hold on. So, anyways, it is really up to us. It really, really is up to us to take a stand. Tomorrow's 3/11. Please get out. Please, I guess I'm begging. I guess at this point I'm begging. Because we need people to get out. I made up a sign that I'm bringing to the Capitol building that says, when scientists lie, people die. because that's exactly what we've had. We've had lying scientists for the last, 60 years, 70 years. They've done nothing but lie. And we've been now conditioned to just accept that cancer is normal, diabetes is normal, young people getting heart attacks is normal. Oh, gee, he must have had a genetic effect. No. He got radiated. This is why young people have heart attacks. I mean, we're on the precipice of a very serious event with Fukushima. It's not over. It's only getting worse. We haven't seen the worst of Fukushima. When they say Fukushima is here, it's only just beginning to get here, folks. It's not just here. We haven't seen the worst. It's not over. This is the beginning of it. And unless we get our worldwide governments, they're spending all this money and all this time fighting over there in the Ukraine. And really, you know what that's about? Those 15 nuclear power plants in the Ukraine. That's what I think. They have 15 nuclear power plants in the Ukraine. And they're having a war. Can you imagine if one of those bombs struck a nuclear power plant, what that would do to the entire ecology of our planet? I mean, the idea of having a war zone near nuclear power plants on its own is an insane thesis. But it's not just a thesis anymore, folks. It's actually really happening. And tomorrow, hundreds of thousands of people need to take to the streets. I mean, we need hundreds of thousands of people. People look at us as, oh, you're just an anti-nuclear. In fact, in my own little newspaper here in Eugene, Oregon, you know what happened? I gave them this big, long press release. The newspaper said it couldn't be more than 170 characters. So I made this press release that was really succinct. I made sure I didn't go beyond the 170 characters. I submitted a press release to the Eugene Weekly for the calendar events to say the Post-Ignorance Project, commemorates the 3/11 disaster. Join us on the Capitol steps. I forget what the little blurb said. Do you know what got printed? I about fell off my chair. What got printed in the Eugene Weekly was 3/11/15 anti-nuke protest, Capitol building, Salem. That's it. Nothing about 3/11 Fukushima. Nothing. Anti-nuke protest. That was it. That's how they sum it all up now. And the Eugene Weekly is supposed to be the, quote, liberal newspaper in Oregon, one of the most liberal newspapers in Oregon. This is what we're up against. This is exactly what we're up against. So the mindset of the people who are in complete control of all the media is, well, they're just not going to give us 2 bits of a word, period. And I don't know where that came from structurally, but that seems to be the status quo. So we have to push, and we have to get out in the streets. Kevin Blanch is going to be on the Avila Beach Pier tomorrow at 10 a.m. That's near Diablo Canyon. And he will be speaking with post-ignorance people. They'll be marching over to Diablo Canyon, doing a little vigil there. Then he will be marching back over to the San Luis Obispo Courthouse, where, frankly, the Mothers for Peace today are marching. When they're ending, I forgot to mention this, when they're ending their March for Peace, they're handing in documents to the courthouse to show that the people that were running the nuclear power plant there were lying to the government, and they were doing everything they could to deceive the government. And so they're calling for indictment. And frankly, that's actually what needs to happen. Although anybody who's been involved in this, has been involved in this thing, knows that nothing's going to happen. We have the Price-Anderson Act, and no one's going to jail. No one's going to get arrested. Kevin seems to think they're going to get arrested. I told him I'll pay him some money when I see somebody gets arrested, because that, I don't believe it for a second. I think we are too deep in shit. I think they just keep pouring more shit on us, and we're still wading through it. And really, it's time to get out the hoses and clear the shit out. I mean, really, it's just time for us to take a stand as adults, as human beings, and say no. No to the warmongers, no to the profiteers, and no. You know, you cannot use humanity and every life on this planet as an excuse for profit. There's more to life than profit. And, you know, financial gain means nothing when you don't have your health. So I hope all of you will join us tomorrow at some effort somewhere out in the world. Let me give you that website again one more time. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's really important. It's called Fukushima 4th Anniversary Events.blogspot.com. And 4th is spelled out, F-O-U-R-T-H. So it's Fukushima 4th Anniversary Events.blogspot.com. And it gives you worldwide events. 4th anniversary of 3/11 Fukushima nuclear accident events and actions worldwide. This March, around the world, are going to be at the local consulate, at the Japanese consulate. So there's going to be lots of people doing protests at the consulates of Japan all around the world. I know there's going to be one in Portland, Oregon. I know there's going to be one in San Francisco and in Los Angeles. They're all around. So there is an event somewhere near you that you can get out in the street. And I know you may have to take off some work time. It's worth it. You know, if we don't stand up to these people, we're not going to have work time. We're going to have crisis time, and the entire ability for us to have an economy is going to collapse. And in fact, we're headed near that now. And so when it does collapse, what are we going to have left? Think about that one, folks. When the world economy collapses, what the hell is going to happen to Fukushima? What's going to happen to all the nuclear power plants that are falling apart? I mean, these are things that we really have got to start asking some serious questions about. And we've got to start demanding that the resources that we currently have be placed properly, and learning how to mitigate these factors and how to honestly learn how to study nuclear science in a way that is not going to harm the planet. Just shut it down. What we really need to do is put science on how to cure the problems that nuclear disasters cause, and that nuclear energy causes, and just shut down the whole nuclear industry. It needs to shut down. Nuclear is death. And they say, well, it's the way of the future. It's the cleanest thing. It's not the cleanest thing. And imagine this, there's probably a lot of things that we don't know about that comes from nuclear that we can't even see. We can't even understand it, like the nanosecond particle of it all. So I just cannot even get over this enough for you guys to encourage every single person to put your courage feet on. I say that all the time. We need to walk in love. And you got to put your courage feet on. It is not easy to step out. It is not easy to keep going in the face of it all when everything around you tells you that don't worry, it's useless, it's pointless, there's no future, you might as well just give up and be happy. No. We need to go down swinging, and guess what? If we push back, we can change the world. You know, that's, what was that, one of Newton's laws is that, you know, an object in motion will stay in motion unless it's changed by another object. Well, we need to be that other object. So we can change the trajectory of this if we make an effort. In fact, I know me and Kevin have. I know Kevin has. I know Kevin's affected me, and me and Kevin together have. And, you know, thank God for Eric Jordan and all the great work he's done with us. And, you know, Thomas Ackerman, Shane Russell. There's been some really great activists. You know, Christine Consola, without her, where would we be without these people, these individuals? Miss Milky the Clown. Small people. Lydia Levy, I mean, small people who had no real history in the nuclear industry got involved in this and said, wait a minute, folks, we have got to, and so everyone did, each one of those people that I met did what they thought they could do, and guess what? They have affected the world of nuclear. They have affected the capacity of the American public and the worldwide population to understand the crimes against humanity that the nuclear cartel is doing. This is why it's vitally important for every single person that thinks that they can do something to just go do it. Respond to your gut level. If you think you can go do something, you know, turn off the inner censor in your brain and just take action, even if it makes you anxious, even if it makes you nervous, just go do it. Because guess what? The consequences of staying silent is complicity. It means it's you telling the nuclear industry that you don't really mind that badly, that it's not that bad what they're doing to our future. But I mind, and I'm sure you mind, otherwise you wouldn't be listening at this point in the hour. We've got 10 minutes left. So it's really important for every single person to do what you can. You know, I do my effort. I mean, I do stupid little YouTube videos that are puppet shows. And I'm not even a puppeteer. But I'm just trying to figure out every way to get the message out that we have got to shake people up and get them to understand that nuclear has got to stop. And we have to get our government agencies to stop, talking about nuclear war. Stop using depleted uranium weapons and denying it, because we're selling depleted uranium weapons around the world. Did you hear the news this morning? One of our number one people who are buying the U.S. military aid is Saudi Arabia. We're arming Saudi Arabia with weapons, and you know that they are depleted uranium weapons. So this has just got to end, and it's up to us. So I hope that all of you that are within the sound of my voice will go to this page, Fukushima 4th Anniversary Event.blogspot.com. If you're not near Diablo Canyon, if you're near Diablo Canyon, please join Kevin Blanch in the Post-Ignorance Project at Avila Beach tomorrow near Diablo Canyon. And do what you can to stand up and make your voices heard. Call your elected officials. Call your local senators. Call your local officials and let them know. And if you're in the Northwest, let them know you do not want the wind project. You do not want little tiny nuclear power plants popping up all over the Northwest, which is what that plan is all about. In Oregon, they stuck that program under economic development. I was trying to find it on the agenda. It's listed as economic development, folks. Building little tiny nuclear power plants all over the Northwest is considered economic development after Fukushima. That alone tells you that our elected officials haven't got a clue what they're doing. They are just, swallowing down the propaganda and the lies. And it is up to us to stop them. Because they're not going to find out unless we tell them. And once we tell them they can't ignore it, they might decide they have to ignore it, but in the back of their head, they're going to listen. And this is why it takes a concerted effort. Fukushima changed the world. We have 3, some people say 5, nuclear power plants in complete meltdown. Right now, 4 years later. 4 years, people. 365 days a year times 4 of nuclear meltdown. Pouring into the Pacific Ocean, nuclear waste pouring in. The games they play at Tesco, pretending that they're like doing things. They're hiring homeless people and drunks. They're not even telling us how many people have died at Fukushima. We're on a need-to-know basis, and we don't need to know. They're lying to the Japanese people. I've heard stories that when a baby in Japan comes out mutated, the government euthanizes them and tells the mother the baby was dead at birth. How inhumane is this industry? How much longer are we going to have to go on with this? And it is going to take all of us to get everyone we know to at least begin to stand up and to say no to it. I understand the challenge. I mean, I have 2 grown children who basically tell me that I'm an extremist, that there really is nothing that we can do except prepare for the worst. No. We are having to prepare for the worst, but that's not all we can do. We can stop the worst. We can stop the nuclear industry. It has to end now. 4 years of unmitigated, catastrophic nuclear contamination pouring into the Pacific Ocean is now killing all the sea life in the Pacific Ocean. That has to end. So I hope everybody will join us. I'll be out at the state capitol tomorrow. I'll get out there at 9 o'clock. We're staying from 9 to 2, and then I'm going to head up to Portland to support. There's also a protest at Pioneer Park with Mimi German. I'm going to stop in there, and then I'll go to the Japanese consulate. Kevin Blanch is going to be on Avila Beach, and he will be starting his protest at 10 a.m. at the Avila Beach Pier. And the day after that, like after the 12th, he is going to be starting his consciousness walk. And we really hope that everybody out in California will support him. And he'll be posting videos on a regular basis that he's going to walk from Diablo Canyon to San Francisco to make people consciously aware that there is an ongoing catastrophe at Fukushima that we cannot ignore. And that Diablo Canyon is one of the biggest threats that our country has going on. Diablo Canyon has got to be shut down and decommissioned properly. Not like at San Onofre where they're just going to allow them to store the waste right there for another 40 years. But actually, from what I understand at San Onofre, they've been told they can't move the waste for 40 years because it's too hot. So we have a catastrophic event that shuts down San Onofre, and now the waste has to sit there for 40 more years. And Diablo Canyon, they're just now beginning to think, well, maybe they'll shut it down. I mean, we cannot just wait for them to issue the death blow against us. We have at least got to stand up. It's our responsibility as human beings and as adults. It's our duty as human beings to protect the children of the future and to stop the nuclear cartel. They're not going to do it for us, folks. They're willing to sacrifice their own children. So our efforts have got to save their children. The people are trying to kill us. We have got to save their children. It's up to us. So I hope that you will end up showing up at one of our events tomorrow. And if not, go to this page, Fukushima 4th Anniversary Events.blogspot.com. Find one near you and show up. Be present. Be present. You know, what do they say? The present is a gift, right? The future isn't here yet and the past is gone, but the present is a gift and it's up to us. So I hope that we will see all of you, every single person listening to this radio show. I hope all of you will have some type of report to put out tomorrow on the event near you. It's 4 years, folks. It's time. We do not want to have a 5th year anniversary. We want to have it shut down by next year. We want to have it stopped. The only way to do that is to demand worldwide governments get actively engaged. So I hope that all of you will take this word seriously. Tim will be back on Thursday, and he'll be talking to you guys about what's gone on, I'm sure, at the events over at Diablo Canyon. And, he'll be giving you an update. But I want to thank everybody here for hanging in there and listening to me. This is kind of on the fly. Kevin called me last night and asked me to fill in. So, I'm not an expert at this, but look, it is up to all of us to decide that we matter, that our children matter, that human life matters, that life on our planet matters. We cannot take it for granted. There is a lot of hope and a lot of joy that emanates from the human spirit, and it is up to us to keep it alive. Life matters. Not just Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. Lives matter. And yes, death is part of life, but you know what? Unnecessary death is not part of life. Death caused by murderers does not have to be part of life. That's why we have laws. It's an outrage that we're just continuing to let the nuclear cartel kill our culture and kill our planet. We must stand up to them. It's our responsibility. This is not just a joke. It's not just something that's a lighthearted thing. It's heavy. But guess what? We can carry the weight. It's up to us. We have the strength. We can actually do it together. We have the strength. We just have to stand up and face them. And they're not going to be as scary as we think they are. They're weaker than you know. We're stronger than all of them together. So look forward to seeing you guys out at some event tomorrow. You guys take care. So Kevin Blanch is doing his best. Lonnie Clark doing her best. Eric Jordan, we're all doing our best. Thomas Ackerman doing our best. Shane Russell, Christina Consolo, all of us. Miss Milky the Clown. Put your courage feet on, everybody, because we need to have them. Put your courage feet on.
All hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. They'll be calling you a radical. Twingate, 311, whatever you want to call it. I call it Pacific